Hey folks, Mark here. Still on Circle Straddlers. We're going to look at some of the ways that they do stuff and in a generalized sense. But once you know these key elements, they're really kind of easy to spot because there's underlying themes. Now, I'm going to talk about a term that I picked up from people talking about dealing with narcissists. Now, what they talked about is narcissists tend to use what they call FOG, F-O-G. And these are the main approaches that they use. And Circle Straddlers, it also applies to them, right? Now, I'm not saying all Circle Straddlers are narcissists, okay? But there's enough overlap that you can use this and you can help understand. Now, what does FOG stand for? Fear, obligation, and guilt. Okay? And once you know these are their main purviews, this is what they use the most, it's like, gotcha. And when you see them trying to use this stuff, that's when you go, click, I got it. What was a confusing situation before, once you know about FOG, it's like, yep, I know what you're doing. So anyway, first let's talk about fear. Now, interesting thing, fear is a critical move when it comes to dealing with these people. Okay? But what is important to know isn't what you think it is. Okay? And I'm going to start out by asking you a very important question. What are you afraid of? Okay? Now, I'm serious about, sit down and think about this, because this is how, when they're looking for a way in, they're going to see it. Okay? If you're afraid, you're going to broadcast it. We'll talk about that later, but there's the thing is, once you start looking at what are you afraid of, there's the obvious stuff. Okay, I'm afraid of physical violence. Okay, I'm afraid of emotional violence. I'm afraid of losing my job. Those are pretty obvious fears. Okay, and yeah, whether or not they happen, they will happen is a different issue. However, what about the more subtle stuff? Okay? Those are the obvious types. The more subtle stuff is like, okay, are you afraid of losing face or status in your social group? Are you afraid of looking bad to other people? Okay. Are you afraid of, being manipulated again? Right? Are you afraid of being hurt, like including emotional abuse again? Right? Are you afraid of standing up for yourself? These are the things that are less obvious, but they are very important to understand that you have these fears. Okay? And people, I'm not afraid of that. Yeah, it's way more complicated, but looking at this as a general situation, fear, what I just listed in that list, the guy's going to be looking, a Circle Straddler, he's watching for your reaction. Okay? And we subconsciously broadcast stuff, and we don't know we're doing it, but he's looking for that broadcast. He's looking for those signals. And when he sees them, he knows that's the way to approach. Okay? Now, we're going to take a side trip, is once we are afraid, once we get emotional, okay, we look at, everything changes. Right? We put on a different filter in front of our view, and pretty much everything we do is coming through that lens of fear. Okay? It's going to affect how we talk, it's going to affect what we do, it's going to affect what we think, but most of all, it's going to affect what we think are our options. Okay? Now, a fear response has set reactions. Generally speaking, there's something that we've done before, we know it works. That is what we're going to do, for good or bad. Okay? Those are the options that we see. And because of this, like, other options are limited. We don't see those. All we see is the fear options. That's why I'm talking about it will affect how you see what you see as options, what you think, what you feel. You know, that tinge, or that, tinge, whatever, is underneath. Now, how upset we are with that, or emotional we are, or how afraid we are, really depends on us. That's why it's so important to know what we're afraid of, because we need to know when we get into that mindset, that's what's going on, and to see other options. And there are other options. There's a lot of other options, but your fear won't let you see them. Okay, so we've got that one. Circle Straddlers, as I said, are watching for the signs that you're afraid, okay, or that you're emotional, that you're getting angry, etc. That helps them decide what they're going to do. Now, I'm going to give you a trick, which is kind of weird, because I'm not telling you not to be afraid, not to have that, not to be worrying about this could happen. All right. What I'm going to tell you is, when somebody's watching for that reaction, something you can do is take the tip of your tongue and press it up against the top of your mouth. Right? Not in the front, but kind of like in the middle between your teeth and the dangly thing. I can't remember what it's called. Press hard. And I'm going to show you what happens. Now, doesn't look like anything happened. That's the point. Because what happens is, instead of my body giving these signals, as I am subconsciously trying to, pretend that I'm an adult and not afraid and all this stuff, all those signals go away when I press. I'm not giving him what he needs to read the situation. Okay? Now, we're going to do another video entirely on fear, right? And some of the problems with circle straddlers and people's imagination running amok with it, and why they get so uncomfortable. But no, fear is an element of this. It's part of F.O.G. And once you know to look for that, you'll see it. Now, moving on, there is obligation. Now, this is one of those really, it's real, it's big, and the thing is, most people don't understand obligation. Okay? See, the thing is, the circle straddler understands obligation more than you do, because he's thought about it, because he's the one who's trying to get something from you through your sense of obligation. Okay? Now, I'm going to take this to an extreme and point out that it's a human thing, that we humans live in groups. We operate within these groups. We follow the rules. The rules have give and take, right? That we, in a group, we have obligations to other group members. Okay? That is just, it's a survival thing. And it is wired in our DNA, right, and in our brains, to feel this obligation. And like, you share with people in your group more than you do with outsiders. So it's a complex issue, and if If you guys want, I'll do a video on it about the different circles and what do you owe people inside this circle versus in this guy who's in this circle, or this person who's not in your circle at all. Okay? Because all the things that are good about humanity are what we do for those inside our circle. Okay? A lot of the bad stuff we do is for people who are outside the circle. And yet, the Circle Straddler is going to try and get you to feel obligated to treat that person like in an inner circle. So, one of the things I want to bring up, though, is in cultures that are really trying to survive, the sense of obligation is built in. Okay? You have an obligation to your family, and this can be a real problem. Now, I have a friend, or I had a friend, Stephen Brown, who got his degree in anthropology, cultural anthropology, by studying people who had left one of those cultures and come to the United States. Okay? The thing about it is, in those cultures, like if you're a business person and you own a store or something, you are obligated. If a family member, no matter how distant, shows up saying, hey, I need help, you have to help. You have to give, right? To the point of actually you can beggar yourself helping all these shirt-tail relatives who are showing up going, I need help. And one of the things he found is that the major consistent theme of these people who had gotten out of those cultures and come to the United States was how happy they are to keep their own money instead of being obligated to give it out. Okay? That's an extreme. Okay? But I want you to know that's how far it can go, because it can be cultural. Right? Well, a circle straddler is going to try and use obligation against you. Okay? Like you work together, you're in a group, etc., etc. They're going to say that, you're obligated to help me. Okay? And by the way, if you don't, they'll really suffer. They really need this. So, and again, when you're inside a circle, inside a group, we do help each other, right? But I talk about an economy of relationships. And one of the things is it's a give and take in a functional economy, right? It's mutually beneficial in the long run. And there's, times where this person can give, this person's in need, this person's can give, and this person's in need. It's a back and forth. It's an economy with up and downs. If you want, I can do a video about that too. The thing about it is, circle straddlers tend to also be the ones who are always taking. Okay? It doesn't necessarily have to be a big thing, but there'll be a constant flow of just endless little things that they, hey, because you're on the same team, right? They owe it to you, or you owe it to them. And, this is like siblings who will like, well, you're my sister, so I'm going to take your blouse. Okay? The thing you got to watch for is while social standards and groups come with rules, right? There are some that the person will keep on taking more and more and more. And it doesn't necessarily need to be financial. They'll always be trying to get you to do stuff for them. And they're relying on your sense of obligation to the group. Okay? So watch for this being, it's more subtle than fear, but watch for this obligation being pointed out like, I did something for you and you forever owe me for that. Okay? Which, by the way, as I gave you the tongue trick, let me give you another one. If somebody has done something for you good once, and then they keep on coming back, with more and more and more requests, a really useful thing to say is after you catch on that this has become the pattern, they'll come up with one more thing, and you say, okay, that's fine, I'll do it, but this clears it between us. That thing you did, and they'll remind you about the thing they did. Okay, I did this for you, yes, and I did this, and this. Now we're clear. This clears it. And you tell them that, and they really are kind of stuck with, they can't make too much of a production about it, but if they do, well, they just announce their hand. So that's one. Now, something else I want to talk about is guilt. Okay, a lot of obligations that they are set up for guilt if you don't fulfill what is expected of you. Well, that isn't always, it's not always based on something they did. Okay, a lot of times, we have roles in society, we have roles in groups, we have roles in families. Okay, guilt is when this person stacks all these expectations on that role and then nails you for not fulfilling those obligations. Okay, they make you feel guilty, and they are just going to come at you in all kinds of ways. Watch for this in the fact of they will try to deliberately deliver the guilt. Okay, they'll announce it. They don't say you should feel guilty, but it's like, you're hurting me if you don't do this for me. It's gonna ruin me. Blah blah blah. That kind of stuff. Watch for that being flopped on the table. Because remember, I talked about in the politeness. We tend to give reasons like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that because boom. And they will always try and tell you that their reason for needing this is more than your reason for telling them no. This is more valid than that, right? Here's something to actually watch, by the way, as kind of okay. They will tell you that you are obligated and you should feel guilty if you don't help them, but they really don't tell you how they got into the situation. Okay? Missing that element, okay, and especially clear, examples. Like, oh, I've been so busy, I just couldn't get around to doing it, and I need you to do it, otherwise it's going to get me fired. That's kind of vague. You don't want to go, no. Be conscious of that. Now, the thing is, you'll run into the guilt stuff, and this is less obvious than fear. Like the boss threatening you have to work overtime. It's like, no, I don't. Do you like your job? That's a threat. That's a threat to, and fear, inducing fear. Guilt tends to be a little more subtle. Okay, but it is there, and you can spot it once you know to look for it. Now, there's something that a lot of times circle straddlers will do, because remember, this is something that is subtle. Okay, it's not overt that they can get called on it, but a lot of times what they'll do is they'll take this F.O.G idea and they will use all of it. Okay, they will gossip, they will tell people, especially in stable groups, how you did this and da ba 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 ba, and they're going to try and turn everybody against you, and that's going to give you all three of like, oh my God, I got, I'm going to look bad, I feel, I feel guilty because I didn't help him, I feel obligated, and they make you pay by hitting you with this stuff. Okay? But like I said, F.O.G is a good introduction to the concept of they use this tactic, they use this tactic, they use this tactic. Or strategy. I'm sorry, this strategy is a... Now, the tactics will change depending on the person. But watch for F.O.G and you'll be able to spot a lot of the stuff.